of the Construction Battalion of the United States Navy. During World War II, the 1st CB Battalion came into existence. I looked this up. Early in 1942, I believe in January.
Microphone closer to your mouth.
These CBs were composed of the most skilled craftsmen that could be recruited, such as electricians, welders, carpenters, machinists, mechanics, engineers, and plumbers, and many others. They served in some capacity in most every theater of war in World War II. Many of these early CBs were volunteers. This is something many people don't know. They were volunteers. They were older in age and were promoted to enlisted ranks upon the day they entered the naval services. The younger men, such as myself, people 18, 20 years old, we were required to go through 12 weeks of boot training, and we became the labor force and worked under the guidance of these skilled craftsmen. I served in 1944 and 45, came home in 46. I served with a unit of 800 men in the 64st Battalion. Our main job was to maintain the care and the repair of the airstrip, which we had bombers taking off every day. Our also job was to keep a large supply of fresh water, which we pumped out of the rivers. They're on the island of Leyte in the Philippines. This was available to all ships requesting the water. Now, when you don't have water, this is a big thing. And all we had was salt water. If you was on that ship, you made some, but you couldn't make enough. Any ship requesting it, we loaded them up. We pumped it out of the river that was approximately 3 miles back up in the hills. Anyone requested. However, we were also available to assist Army and Navy personnel whenever they requested it. Army medical physicians that were doing their thing there on the islands to the men that had been wounded were quick to use our service and having temporary buildings constructed to replace the tents that were being used to house these wounded men. This is briefly some of the things that the CBs did. Now, as I said, I was 18 years old. It was all new to me, but I learned a lot. That's about all I have to tell you.
Tell us about those mats up there, Wayne. Point those out. Tell us what you did with those mats.
All right. The mats that the guys are sitting on here, we built airstrips, we repaired airstrips, and we didn't have gravel. We didn't have a lot of concrete. It wasn't available. We had steel mats that were probably 16 to 24 inches wide, and they were 20 feet or longer. I certainly wasn't measuring them or anything, but they clicked together like this. The pilots came in at quite a speed, as planes do today, and occasionally they would hit them a little hard and fly apart. Our job as CB was to lay these down and to repair them for the next planes coming in, which we had approximately 60 B-24s that would come in each morning, or each afternoon, and leave in the morning. Is that what you want? Yes, sir.
Question. So, were they solid steel or were they?
No, they weren't. They were probably 16 inches wide. They had tiny holes in them.
Yeah.
I think you can see these holes.
Right.
And they had hooks on the outsides of each one of them, and they hooked together pretty firm. These huge planes were heavy and loaded with bombs, but occasionally they would make a rough landing, rough takeoff, and we always were available to redo them.
So they were only steel. They had holes in them, but only steel.
Yes. They were shipped there to the island and came in, and we unloaded them and hauled them out to the strips. And it was much easier than try to bring in concrete and make landings.
Later on, they made them of other alloys that were lighter. There was some aluminum and some at a later time after the war, but during World War II, they're all steel.
Yeah, they were all steel where I was.
Now, there's something in the books that says our runway here is 8,000 feet by 150 feet. They said you could make a 8,000-foot runway by 200 feet in 2 days with these mats. That's a a shorter period of time. It takes about 5 years for us to make a runway, but you can make a whole runway quickly.
They did everything quickly. We were 3 days. We packed up enough sea rations and so forth when we built these buildings for the doctors in another portion of the island. We prepared to go down and stay 3 days. We had pup tents, and we stayed 3 days and built a building. I would say it was 30 feet wide and probably 100 feet long. And the doctors immediately moved in. They were operating on patients, and the patients were in tents. They lived pretty rough. But we helped them out a lot of ways.
Can you tell us where you were trained, Wayne, where you were trained, and how long it take you to get over there to Japan or to Philippines? And did you see the Lady Gulf War? That was the biggest Navy battle ever in history, the Battle of Lady Gulf. Did you see that?
True. That is true. But I wasn't a part of that. That happened approximately a month and a half before I arrived. Well, let's see. What did you ask first?
Just how you got over there, and did you have any training to make these mats?
We had lots of training during boot training, but we had the best training that I received was from these sea beams, these old salts that were so much older than we were. When you're 18 and someone else is 35 or 40, it's a different world. I want to tell you another little story in a minute. I left San Francisco November the 17th. And, I get a little mixed up on it. My ship was torpedoed in the Lady Gulf, December the 25th. So, how many days is there between November the 17th and December the 25th? That's how long we was on the ship. The ship was beached. It did not go to the bottom. We beached it, and it keeled on inside. We lost a few men. And later the sea beams went underwater, which was new to a guy 18 years old. I never even watched anyone weld. They went under the water and welded plates where this torpedo had hit and raised that ship and salvaged everything that we brought over with us. And I'd hate to try to describe what we brought. Bulldozers, trucks, jeeps, lumber, everything that you could imagine to be on. But training, that sort of thing, we learned it under the older guys. One I want to tell you about, there was a man that bumped very close to where I did. He was 54 years old. Now imagine this in sea beams. See, we commonly think today, you're too old, you can't get in. Back then, if you knew your job and knew it the way they did, they were glad to have you. I asked him one day, I said, why are you here? He was as white-headed as I was. And he said, I have two sons. They're both in the U.S. Navy. My wife passed away. And he said, I'm a good barber. So that's what he did. He cut hair. But imagine, 54 years old in the war. He charged us 20 cents every haircut. He donated all the money to the Red Cross. just one little thing. We had many, many experiences similar to this. But these elder men that were these craftsmen, you never heard any young guys like me or anyone else ever giving them any trouble at all because they were so much smarter than we were, knew so much more. And the average, I would say, was probably 25, 35 years old. But get up to elderly. Anything else?
Just one more thing about the mats. So did you bring them with that ship?
No, those mats were not bought by our ship. I'm not sure that they knew exactly what we would be doing when they loaded that ship. I don't know. Your 18-year-old seaman don't have much to do with that. These mats were there, and a great many of them were already laid down when we got there. But you see these planes that would take off with these huge bombs every morning to fly up to a place called Formosa. Does that ring a bell with any of you old guys? What do they call it today? Taiwan. But they bombed that place day after day after day. And whenever we could get a pilot to talk to us, tell us about their experience, they'd come back, be all shot up, holes in them and so forth. Not often they wanted to talk about it, but that went on weeks after week. And I'm not sure they were hitting Formosa every time. The time that I asked one of the pilots where he'd been, maybe it was one of the navigators or bombardiers. Anyway, he said, we've been to Formosa. So I probably thought he was going there every day. But you know that we were so far away from Japan that you could only go so far. We hadn't taken over Okinawa and Iwo Jima at that time. That made things a big difference.
Well, anyway.
Yes, ma'am.
Were many doctors on the site that addressed the need?
I'm sure there were. But see, I wasn't, I carried a 30 caliber M1 rifle. And all CBs were issued that. Later, as time went along, they took them away from us. I think they thought we were more danger with them than without them. But the battles were over primarily when we arrived. But the fact that this torpedo plane got in and laid one in the side of our ship meant that some still going on. We had a few men that were killed. Yes. Only time that I was ever in a contact with doctors, you know, we don't. Army personnel, Navy personnel don't have much to do with doctors unless they're injured. And you try not. But this might prove interesting to you. I had a brother in a medical corps. He was on the same island I was on. Imagine that. And he worked as a guard in the tents where the men were lying in their bunks. And I would see doctors because they were dressed different, most of them. They still wore white coats and so forth. But I'm sure they were good. The only time I went there, I had a bad tooth that gave me trouble, and I was 20 miles away in a town called Tacloban up on the beach. He was back in the jungle area, 20 miles, and he managed to get a dentist to take that tooth out. I remember that episode, but I was never injured. Anything else?